Recently, Rob and I bought a puppy. I'm not sure why we bought a puppy, and I'm not sure I was even in the conversation about buying a puppy. I certainly can't remember saying yes to getting a puppy, but we've got a puppy and she is adorable. She is a cross between a collie dog and a poodle. So she's a collie poo. Now she's more collie than she is poodle, but we have had plenty of poo from her as well. But she is absolutely gorgeous. She's very naughty. And that runs in the family, of course, because I've got a son called Lloyd. But she is amazingly gorgeous. And she has got so much energy that she bounds around. And when I'm taking her for walks, it's wonderful. My daughter has a puppy as well. And very often we go together and these two dogs literally roll as if they're professional wrestlers in the mud. And it's wonderful to watch them. But you know, as I'm walking with, her name is Winnie, a very posh name. And as I'm walking with her, I'm walking through the woodlands and I noticed at this time of year, the autumn, the colour of the leaves. And I love the colour of the leaves in autumn. Autumn, I think, if I'm honest, is my favourite season, as long as it's not raining. But I do love the sun in autumn. And you see the gold and the yellow and the oranges of the trees. And then as the leaves are about to fall, they turn brown and they crisp up, don't they? And I can remember as a child jumping on the crispy leaves and hearing them crackle. But I love walking through the forest with Winnie. But then you know with these trees that in a few months' time, buds are going to grow for spring. And spring brings us hope because there's new life about to come. I love watching beautiful sunrises. Rob and I have been to Africa several times with a charity, and we've seen the most amazing sunrises. And you see the colours, the pinks, the blues, the purples, and the lavenders, and it is just so beautiful. And you see this beautiful, huge sun rising up. I've never seen anything quite like it. And as it's rising, you realize how great God is. And you realize that the darkness has gone and the day is coming. The darkness has gone and the day is coming. The hope of a new day. Light and hope are important because of course, we have to deal with darkness if we deal with light. And the Bible is full of darkness and light, isn't it? There are darkness in tough times, of course there are. We have known that to some extent through this pandemic, through this experience, we have known darkness, but there has been light on times, I hope, as well. The last 2 years have been so difficult, haven't they? And I know even in this room, people will have struggled with some of the difficulties of the pandemic. I remember as a small child, going to bed, my mother used to say to me, time to go over the wooden bridge. And I knew she meant it was upstairs and it was bedtime. And she would tuck me in bed and I would say, and she would tell me a story. And actually, I realized recently, even my father told me stories going to bed. And he would tell me stories of two little boys called Johnny and Georgie. Now, my father would probably be nearly 180 now if he was alive. And for me to remember that must be very, very important. And but I always remember saying to them, when you leave the room, will you leave the landing light on? And the door opened just a little bit. So I had this chink of light that made me feel safe and secure. And I needed that before I went to sleep. And I love the story of the little boy who was taken to bed by his mum. And like me, he wanted that security. And we all need security on times, don't we? As old or as young as we are, we want to feel secure. But this little boy said to his mum, will you leave the light on and the door open? And she did. And she said, of course I will. And she went downstairs and busied herself in the kitchen. And within 10 minutes, the little voice came down the well of the stairs. Mum, can you come up here? I'm feeling a bit frightened. And she said, no, darling, it's fine. Mummy's downstairs, Daddy's downstairs, and you're fine. So get back into bed. And he did. And within 10 minutes, that little voice came over the stairs again. Mum, I really need you up here. I am really frightened. And she said, darling, don't you worry. God is with us everywhere. And so he's with you in your bedroom. Go back to bed. 10 minutes later, a different voice came down the stairs, a voice that was a little more angry and a little bit more assertive. And he said, Mum, I want you up here now. I want somebody with skin on. But you know, we all need that hope, don't we? In the book of Exodus in the Old Testament, it tells that God led his people by a pillar of light in the darkness for safety. And he wasn't going to leave his children alone. And that's how important light is to us. The book of Isaiah, I heard a verse from the book of Isaiah this morning. That was a beautiful verse, beautiful verse. The book of Isaiah has many verses about light and hope. And the people of Israel were going through very difficult days. And quite frankly, they had deserted God. They had decided they didn't need God, and they rejected him. Ahaz the king built a pagan god in the grounds of the temple, and he gave it to the Syrian king, and said that they wanted to be led by Syria. And God knew. God had different plans for these people, like he's got different plans for you, Karen. He's got special plans for you. And what they didn't realize, what Ahaz didn't realize, was the king of Syria was plotting to bring the people of Israel down. He was going to annihilate them from history. But God had different plans for them. And God, in his mercy, put his hand down into the darkness and led those people out of darkness and back into light again. And that's what he does for us. When we go through those dark times, and we all do, we all go through difficult times. We need to perhaps just hang on in there and wait for God to put his hand down and take us from the darkness and bring us back out to light. I think actually going through darkness often strengthens us somehow, but God is there every step of the way. And I was reading a verse this week, and it's normally a verse that we read at Christmas time, but this verse is quoted in Isaiah, and it was for the people that God was helping, and it says this: the people of darkness have seen a great light. The people of darkness have seen a great light. Of those living in the shadow of death, a new light has dawned. Oh, that's hope, isn't it? That's a real hope for us. Someday the Lord will turn our darkness into light. All this will be different. All this will be different. King David called God the lamp who lights up the darkness. And do you know what? When I was coming here this morning, I felt really excited about speaking to you, because I feel that this is a word for us today, not because it's me, but because God is saying, I am going to bring you into the light. I am going to bring you into the light. It was difficult in COVID because we couldn't see people. We couldn't have connection with people physically. And it was hard. I really missed seeing my grandchildren. Oh, I could see them through the window. And that was the best, second best. But it wasn't the same. I wanted to kiss them and cuddle them and hug them and play games with them. But it wasn't to be, and it was hard. And some people went through some really difficult times. I did, though, in lockdown, invent playing games with them on FaceTime. We played noughts and crosses on FaceTime. We played snakes and ladders on FaceTime. I even did a jigsaw with Evie on FaceTime. And it was fun, but it wasn't the same. But some of you may have gone through lockdown and you've lost somebody, and it's been really hard. For us, we had, many, many years ago, we had a man knocking on our door, and his name was Ronnie, and it was Christmas Eve. And Ronnie stood on our front door, and Rob had known him through the boys' camps in church for many years. And Ronnie had something of special needs. And in fact, we've discovered years down the line that he was actually autistic. And but he was stood there with a black plastic bag with all his worldly goods in it and a frozen chicken. And Rob said to him, Ronnie, how are you? He hadn't seen him for such a long time. And he said, what are you doing? And he said, I've come to see you. He said, well, what are you doing with that frozen chicken? And he said, well, somebody gave it to me. Now, Ronnie was practically homeless. He didn't have anywhere to cook a frozen chicken. So Rob said, well, come on in and I'll cook the chicken for you. And he came in and we had a cup of tea with him and we sat and chatted with him. And I said to him, Ronnie, why don't you stay for Christmas with us? So he did. And I phoned my family that night. I said, listen, guys, you've got to come up trumps tomorrow because you've got to wrap up some socks, some smellies, some gloves, whatever you can find, because we've got a guest tomorrow. And I told them about Ronnie. And in fairness, they did. And we had Christmas lunch together. And as Ronnie sat there, he started to cry because he'd never known a real family Christmas since the age of 5. And he was now in his about 30. And he was brought up in children's home. And Ronnie stayed with us, not just for Christmas, but for 45 years. So he had a very long Christmas. And last September, Ronnie died. And it's been really hard because he had become a real member of our family. And it has been really hard to lose him. But I know perhaps some of you here have lost friends or relatives through COVID and lockdown. And it's been tough. It taught me, what have I learned through lockdown? Well, it taught me the value of relationships, of family, of friends, the value of church and being together, of worshiping God together. You know, there's nothing like it really, of worshiping God. I've learned a lot this week, funnily enough, about worship. And there's nothing quite like worshiping God. And that's why it's so lovely to be here this morning with you, in the flesh, as they say. Sometimes we feel that the darkness, especially if it's really dark for us, but I thank God for the light. And I really pray that we may know God in that darkness and that we won't give up. It was Sir Christopher Wren, the great architect, who built about 50 churches in the 1600s around London. And he had 2 specific designs for his churches. The first one was a very strong spire. And that would be because it's going up to God. The second was a very unusual thing. He built his churches with plain glass in them. Now, of course, the day was stained glass, and that was very popular. And I have traveled around the world quite a bit, and I've seen some most amazing stained glass windows. But Sir Christopher Wren thought differently. And he felt that God had given us light and that he wanted to build his church windows or built his churches with plain glass so that we could bathe in the light and the worship of God. Isn't that a lovely thought? That we bathe in worship with God. And so that was Sir Christopher Wren, and I thought that was very unique, actually. In the New Testament, in Matthew 5, is one of the parables of Jesus, which talks about light. And it talks about us not keeping our light under a bushel or a bowl. We need to spread this light that we have of Jesus. We don't need to push it in people's faces, but we need to spread the light of Jesus. As I was driving here today, I was thinking, as I was preparing for this week, I was thinking of this church. And the last time I spoke, I was in the church, in the pulpit. And but I was thinking, what an amazing group of people you are. You truly are an amazing group of people. And I was thinking about your church, and as we Welsh say, it was built on a twmp. And a twmp is a small hill in Welsh. And that church is on a hill for a reason, because you are the light in this area. And you are an amazing group of people. And through you, by your acts of love, of care, of just sacrifice to people around you, can change this whole area. I find that really exciting. I really do. And I wanted to say to you, please don't give up. You may be small in number now, but God has other plans for you. But we need to recognize that God is in control. And by doing all those things with those people, you know, just a cup of tea, just a phone call to somebody, a walk with somebody, a mum who has small children needing an hour of just peace to herself. You know, all those things are so needed in our society. And just doing those small things, you may be showing them the light of the God who loves you and who loves them. It is important for the people around us. Has COVID drawn us closer to God? Well, I have seen the light in the dark times, and I guess you have too. And Jesus is our hope in the darkness, just as those buds are coming through the trees for the leaves of next spring. Jesus is our hope. And it says, I read something this week, and it says, when we stand in the darkness, hope comes when we stand in the darkness and look out to the light. God is there. God is always there. He's never going to move. He's never going to change. I love candles. And at Christmas time, I love to light candles around my house. I love to see the flickering flame, and just, they mesmerize me. And sometimes when I'm reading and praying, I sometimes light a candle because it helps me to concentrate on God being in the room with me. But I love candles. I've got a lovely card which somebody gave me in a frame, and it says on it, "Keep me burning, Lord." And there's a picture of a beautiful candle on there. And it says, "Keep me burning, Lord." That's my desire. That's my desire, that I can keep burning for God till the day I die. And I hope that that's what happens to me. You know, I started by saying it's only 62 sleeps to Christmas. And I said it as a bit of a joke, actually. But as I thought about it, I thought it's also a time on those 62 days where we can actually find God and look for him more and more towards Christmas, because Jesus, when he came into the world, is the light of the world. And so let's spend these 62 days leading up to Christmas seeking God out and seeing what he wants for us, seeing what he wants us to do in our lives. I got up the other day, and for the first time in my life, I said to God, who do you want me to see today? Rather than get in my car and just dive here and dive there and do this and do that, I said, what do you want me to do today? And sometimes you may not get a direct answer, but you know that what you're going to do that day is good for somebody. But I just felt the need to say to him, what do you want me to do today? Let me include God in my day, every day. I do try to read my Bible most mornings. I can't say I never miss, because I do. But I go out then and I might not think about him till I go to bed at night. And somehow we need to bring God more into our day. We do need to bring God more into our day. The darkness is real and we can't get away from that. But Jesus is the light of the world. When I was a little girl, we used to sing a song in Sunday school, and it was called "This Little Light of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine." And our light may be small, but there's a lovely saying that says, even the darkness in the whole world cannot extinguish the power of a single candle, because candle is light. God is your light. God is my light. Don't lose heart. Keep me burning, Lord. Bless you.